But you mentioned the word anxiety, and one of the things I say a lot, and I talk about this at Communicamp all the time to the families, I say, can you imagine if you like, and I say this like to the first row, I say, can you imagine if you all had a fever? You just came in, I'm a doctor, you come into my waiting room, and you all have a fever. And I said, all right, the five of you who have a fever, come on back. Come on back into my waiting room, into my exam room. Everyone would be looking at like, what is she doing? She's a nutcase, right? And the reason I'm mentioning that is because anxiety is the same way. Why does an individual have anxiety? Why your daughter had anxiety may be different than somebody else's anxiety. And what's really important to figure out is where is this anxiety coming from? I'm thinking about kids that have some learning challenges or kids on the ASD spectrum, on the autism spectrum, where they can't figure out the social puzzle. And that's so frustrating to them. That is so anxiety provoking. Or I'm sitting in class and everyone's starting and completing work on time, and I'm not understanding what the teacher's saying. Their anxiety is going up, or I can't get the words out quick enough because I have an expressive language challenge and I'm just overwhelmed. Like their anxieties are different. And so, as you clearly said, as they start to find their voice, because you can find a voice, but those other lingering whys are kind of sticking around a little bit, or they're not fully addressed and they air their head. So I'm not sure you see it this way, but I see it where it's almost like it was there, but it's so much clearer now.
Yep. Yeah, because right, we don't have that selective mutism holding them back. Now we can see all of their true colors a little bit clearer, and again that being okay with that. Again, as a parent, it's very overwhelming. I'm the first to admit that having a child with SM is very overwhelming. You've mentioned it before. There's, not a ton of research. There's much more now than when you started on your journey, but it's all very overwhelming. You can't really relate to your friends. Their kids are doing sports and your kid is crying in the corner. It's very overwhelming. And so thinking, okay, now we're overcoming SM, but there's more. It's okay that there's more. And again, I think as our kids get older, we don't have to try to make rainbows and butterflies out of everything anymore. I've learned to be much more vulnerable with our daughter and letting her know that I get anxious. Before our podcast, like I could feel that anxiety creeping in. And to your point too, like, but now we have coping mechanisms. I know to slow my breath down. I know to, take control of the things that I can control. I like using acceptance and commitment therapy for the older kiddos as well, knowing that we don't have to be afraid of anxiety. We don't have to fight against it. We can accept it. Like, yep, come on, anxiety, come on with me to school today during this presentation. I know you're going to be there, but I'm going to do it anyway because I get to choose now what's important to me. And if anxiety is there, anxiety is there, but we can still do the things that we like and what we want. And as our kids get older, it's so fun to see their interests and see all that they can do. My daughter, so they had like their little morning news and they were asking for volunteers to say their favorite candy for Halloween. And she's like, Mom, I rose my hand and then I put it down. And then I rose my hand and I put it down because I wanted to, but I didn't. So there's this like back and forth between her anxiety and who she is going back and forth. And her teacher happened to see her hand up. So she called on her, like, all right, you're going to be interviewed. And she's like, I wanted to do it because it's something I want to do now. I want to be able to try these things. And it was like such an amazing moment for me because I do feel that if she would have just been like, I can't, the anxiety is, I can't do that. But then there's that acceptance of, I can do this, even if I'm anxious. So those moments are just so fulfilling because it's that intrinsic, like they're coming out and they're finding those opportunities on their own.
Yeah, no, I love this story. And I keep thinking of so much as you're saying stuff. I'm like, oh my God, we only have an hour here. I mean, we could talk all day, you and I, and maybe we do more podcasts on different topics. But I will say the more children understand, the more a teen understands, and the more anyone who's struggling with anything understands it, in my professional opinion, the more they're in control of it.
Yeah.
And when you're in control, it gives you, confidence and you start to navigate it easier. You're not as afraid. When I see families at the Smart Center, it's the ones that are completely confused by this. They don't understand. And so instead of, they're very avoidant. They're, I'm never going to do it. I can't do it. And there's a lot of negativity and parents are feeling helpless. But once you teach them and you understand, and for me, the bridge is just a godsend because these kids understand where they're at on the bridge, and they
Yep.
understand why that strategy worked, and that if I take my time to write it and the teacher knows to give me that, like, there's all these things that work hand
Mhm.
in hand. All of a sudden you see them more willing to do more.
Yeah.
And so again, this fuels it. But to get back to our topic, understanding how the whys affect and that lingering aspect that might still be needed to be dealt with.
Mhm.
And that's not a bad thing. That's life and that's realistic. It could be
Yeah.
anything, right? We all have to be we're dealing with something every day in some capacity. But I want our listeners to know that yes, there are many individuals that completely overcome these challenges that affect social communication, and they are elaborative and they are initiative and they are able to be thriving and their life is ahead of them, so to speak.
Mhm.
So yes, you can completely overcome this
Yeah.
without residuals, but it does go back to what were your whys, because you still may need to be focusing on that. But for those that are highly sensitive, a bit timid, maybe there was a misunderstanding, too much focus on talking when they weren't there yet. Yeah, that's a you got to get over those hurdles. But once they're over that and they're home in their home environment, they are initiative, they are elaborative, they can start conversations, they have that they overcome it, right, Kelly? Like,
Mhm.
they're
Yeah.
done.
Yep.
So there are those that are
Yep.
done, but if they're not, that's not a bad thing. It's like you completely said, and it's like life is gonna have hurdles that we have to overcome. It may not be
Yep.
communication, it might be something else.
Yep.
And what I get asked often is, well, does it turn into something else? Like, you've overcome SM, do you now have more generalized anxiety or more separation anxiety? And how would you answer that?
Well, again, kind of like what you mentioned before, it's kind of always been there. That generalized anxiety, that separation anxiety. It's going to be there. And so if we have again can recognize in it. So for our daughter, I call it like a honk breath. She'll get this little like vibration honk in her throat. And so that's my cue is something's going on. So I'm much more in tune to those things that could trigger her. So it's like, well, what's going on at school? And it could be, I have a presentation coming up I'm really worried about. Okay, let's talk through that. So it's going at it more as an inquisitive, like, oh, I've noticed and I'm wondering, giving our kids those opportunities as they get older to start looking on the inside, like, yeah, I'm noticing my stomach is really tight. Instead of, as the little kids, maybe they're just like, my tummy hurts and they don't know why. Is that now let's investigate that. Like what's going on in our life that could be bringing these symptoms on. So again, just kind of teaching them body awareness that maybe we didn't focus on before because we wanted them to use their voice, and now we can talk with them more about what's going on inside, and now let's look on the outside and see what could be causing that and how can we help support those situations.
And with your daughter being 11 as a parent, you're able to be so actively involved. And I will tell
Hmm.
you that for me, with my Sophie, even though she's a fully functioning married, physician in practice, bought their first house, have a dog, living her life, a ton of friends, doing her thing, she is still a sensitive individual. And when she was a little girl, she would get overwhelmed easily.
Hmm.
And she would need what we called it R&R days, like and every once a semester, twice a semester, she'd have decompression days.
Yeah.
And to this day, she'll still say to me, I needed one of those days. But
Hmm.
she herself can read herself and know when she's getting overwhelmed, to
Yep.
be able to pull back and go to yoga. Like, she loves
Hmm.
yoga, she does meditation. I don't have to call her or say, "Hey, what's going on?" She figured that out over the
Yep.
years as we worked together when she was young. And I remember when she was in med school, and I remember she was really overwhelmed once, and like, well, I mean, a lot when you're in med school, but
Yeah.
she was just like, she was very overwhelmed, and, I could hear how she was talking. I go, "Sophie, did you do your yoga today?" And she's like, "No, I haven't done it in 3 days. I counted these." I said, "Sophie, I know you like a book. Come on." And she's like, "You know what, mom? You're right. I'm going to the 5 o'clock class." She called me at 8 and she's like, "Oh my God, I had to do it. I don't," I get so my point is, like, yeah, I'm mom. I still reminded her, but they learn these skills on their own. And that's what we
Hmm.
want. Life after
Yep.
SM is that as you mature and get older, you learn the coping skills, you learn how to manage yourself. So you're
Hmm.
not dependent on others
Yep.
to be able
Yep.
to do it. But as parents, yes, we are there to help them, navigate. So we
Hmm.
found kind of the improved social relationships that occur post
Yep.
SM. I mean, our kids, individuals in general, thrive on connection.
Yeah.
So now a good ramification of post SM is hopefully the relationships are there, the social connections.
Hmm.
And you clearly said that with your daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been so fun just to see her connect with others. And again, kind of again looking at the whys. Everybody's why is different. For her, it felt like maybe her nervous system wasn't picking up those cues of safety in her environment. So we kind of worked on those types of things so that she can feel that connection and now wants that connection because that's what we are as humans. We need connection around us and being aware too of the personality she is drawn towards. Maybe the kids that aren't the most wild and crazy she doesn't want to be with. She likes to be with the kids that maybe just want to do some crafts for a little bit and then get her feeling safe there, and then maybe branch out to those kids that are running around playing football and kickball to build her confidence in that. So again, just kind of noticing the type of people they're gravitating towards and supporting that, and then watching that kind of expand. For her, she actually has started playing football. She plays like football now, and that's like we call it beast mode. Like beast mode has been activated because we gradually kind of introduced her into these environments. I know when she was little, it's like, okay, you're gonna play soccer, go out there, have fun, and she's like, the frozen kid and teeth. Oh. So now we just learn these small little steps. Let them feel that, like, wow, I did that, and then find their own path. And her path has been flag football, and it's so fun to watch her just beast
Oh,
mode.